सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति।
The chapter begins with a question raised by Arjuna. Bhagwan, as far as the goal is concerned, fine. One has to gain the self-knowledge. But then in the society we find two types of seekers. One type of seeker, he renounces the world in order to gain this knowledge, dedicating his entire life for this knowledge. And another type of seeker, they go through the world. They don't renounce the world, they fulfill the responsibilities. Remaining in the world, they try to seek this knowledge. So Bhagwan, among these two seekers, who is superior? And so what is Bhagwan's answer? Arjuna, both the paths are equally effective. But for the majority, escaping the world can become dangerous. So it is always better to go through the world, get matured through the world, get ripened through the world, and then renounce the world. Renounce the world in the sense, what is actually renunciation? Then Bhagavan goes on to explain. Who is a true sannyasi? True sannyasi is the one who is not affected by the ups and downs of life, who doesn't depend on the world for happiness, who seeks happiness from the self itself. Then Bhagavan goes on to describe Karma Yoga, how remaining in the world one can purify the mind. And then Bhagavan goes on to describe Jnana Yoga, after purification of the mind, how to gain knowledge and what is this knowledge. After having described Jnana, the spiritual knowledge, now Bhagavan enumerates the benefits which a Jnani gains. What are the benefits? Yesterday we had seen. Number one, he gains a vision of oneness, Samadarshanam. Second one, he becomes fearless as far as death is concerned, because he comes to know there is no death. Death is a mere illusion. Point number three, his mind remains firmly rooted in the truth, in Brahman. Point number four, he remains unaffected by the ups and downs of life, the pairs of opposites, which comes to everyone. Point number 5. What is point number 5? Asammudaha. Once a person gains the knowledge, he is no more deluded by the attractions of the world. Point number 6. He becomes totally dispassionate towards the worldly pleasures. And point number 7. He gains absolute bliss of the self. His experience is that of continuous bliss of the self. The same idea is continued. Now Bhagavan concludes the entire topic by repeating some of the already repeated statements, but put in a different way. Let us chant verse number 25. Labhante brahma nirvanam Rishaya kshina kalmashaha छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ऋषयः क्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधायतात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः. Yes. So again, a lot of terms are used to indicate this Mahatma. What are the terms? Rishayah, Kshenakalmashaha, Chinnadvaidhaha, Yatatmanaha, Sarvabhutahite Rataha. So again we can put it in some order. So what is the first one? Let us take Sarvabhutahite Rataha. Start from there. Reveling in the welfare of all. What is this? It is nothing but Karma Yoga. Performing action as a worship of the Lord in the service of all. So once a person does this Karma Yoga, performing Sarvabhuta Hite Rataha means reveling in the welfare of all. This should be the way we should live our life. Then what happens? Next one, Kshina Kalmashaha. In this way, when we lead a life of service, of selfless service, what happens? Kalmashaha, the mental impurities becomes Kshina, becomes weak. Impurities are washed away from the heart. Then what happens? Such a person alone are exposed to spiritual knowledge. Such a person, when exposed to spiritual knowledge, learns the value of knowledge. This is the law of the universe, that as a person becomes purer and purer in heart, such a person is exposed to spiritual knowledge. This is the law of the universe. As you keep evolving in spirituality, you will come across the guidance for the next stage. Many times we wonder why the spiritual knowledge is not received by all. This is a common complaint. If such a wonderful knowledge is available, why is it that only very few people seek it? Understand, there is an entrance exam. This entrance exam is not a written exam. Automatically the filtering takes place. This is how Puja Gurudev used to say. So whenever Jnana Yajnas are conducted, we keep the doors open all the time. The filtering happens automatically. Those who have pure heart, they get helplessly attracted towards this knowledge. Those whose hearts are impure, they find, what is this nonsense going on? Fine, study of Bhagavad Gita can be done when one is retired, when there is no other job to do, when you can't do anything. Then we will study Gita. This is the opinion of the majority in the society. They don't understand what the value is, how much treasure-worthy this knowledge is. They will not understand, because to understand this knowledge, you need certain amount of purity. So once the mind becomes Kshina Kalmashaha, such a person, when exposed to this knowledge, he strives to gain this knowledge. So the third term is Yatatmanaha, striving. He values this knowledge, he understands the value of this knowledge, and naturally when you understand the value of something, you strive to gain it. Yatatmanaha. Then what does he become? Rishayaha. He becomes a rishi. Rish means to know. Rishati. Atma tattvam janati. Iti rishihi. Who is a rishi? The one who gains the knowledge of the self. So here let us say, rishi is a person who has done Shravanam and has been exposed to this knowledge. Now once having gained this knowledge, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to do Mananam. Through Mananam what happens? doubts are removed. This is the next term, Chinnadvaidhaha. Chinnadvaidhaha means freedom from all doubts. This comes through Mananam. Chinnadvaidhaha. And once that is done, what is the next step? Nididhyasana. And through Nididhyasana what happens? Brahma Nirvanam Labhante. That a person experiences the bliss of Brahman. His mind merges in Brahman. Again you can put it in a sequence. These are the subjects which we have already discussed. But Bhagavan is repeating it so that he is going to conclude the entire topic now. It is a conclusion. So therefore, the repetition is made. Let us chant the next verse. Again a similar verse. Kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhito brahma nirvanam vartate viditatmanam. Yes. So this is the concluding verse of this chapter, actually speaking. So what was the question of Arjuna in the beginning? Arjuna's question was, Bhagavan is it? Or rather, he describes two types of seekers. The one who is a renunciate, who is striving for knowledge. The one who is going through the world in order to gain knowledge. Now Bhagavan here points out, Arjuna, don't worry about the path. Be more concerned about whether you have reached that goal or not. Whether you have truly become a sannyasi. Don't worry about the outer sannyas. Worry more about the inner sannyas. So here yati. Yati means a sannyasi. Who is a true sannyasi? Description is given here. Kama krodha viyuktana. The one who is free from kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, etc. Again we have to understand this kama krodha, always kama krodha is used, but we have to understand all the others also. In fact, one kama itself is enough. The rest, everything is this. They are all the siblings of kama. Kama means what? Desire. Desire for the world. It is kama. From this kama itself comes the next one. What? Krodha. What is krodha? Anger. When do you become angry? Remember, whenever you are angry in life, definitely there will be something or someone whom you are too much attached to. This is for sure. Without intense attachment, krodha is impossible. You are attached to something or someone, and that someone is not listening to you. Then you become angry. Or there is something which you want to possess it badly, and somebody comes in between. So what happens? The very same intent desire takes the form of krodha towards that person. So you will find there is an intense relationship close relationship between kama and krodha. What is the third term? Kama, krodha, lobha. Lobha means greed. What is this greed? You intensely want something and you get it. And when you get it, you want more. So this lobha also is nothing but kama alone. Intense greed for something. You are getting it, you want more and more of it. That is called lobha. Next one is moha. What is moha? Delusion. What is delusion? Whenever you are intensely attached to something, what happens? Moha happens. Moha means delusion. What is delusion? What is right it appears to be wrong. What is wrong, it appears to be right. This is called moha. What I am not supposed to say, I tell it. What I am supposed to say, I don't tell it. This is called moha. And this happens when there is intense attachment. It's called as delusion. Without attachment, delusion is impossible. Many times the parents are so attached to their children, their defects they don't see. So no? Yes. Whenever the child goes and fights and comes with some other child, the mother who is so attached to the child, she sees only the defects of the other child. Isn't it? She is not able to see the defects of her own child. This happens. This is called moha. Many times in Balavihar competitions, etc., parents come after the prize distribution. Parents come to fight with the judge. My child has chanted so well. You have deliberately shown partiality. Then we make that child chant again and then point out, see, these are the mistakes. Then she is right. When you are too much attached to something, faults become thin. Isn't it? Anyway, so this is called moha. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha. Next is mada. You are intensely attached to something and you have got enough of it, and then you find that others don't have as much as you have. Then what comes? Mada comes. Mada means arrogance. You have more than what others have. The sense of pride is called mada. The next one is matsarya. You intensely want something and you find that somebody is having more than what you have. Then what comes? Jealousy comes, matsarya. Remember, jealousy will not come if you don't want anything. Suppose somebody is having too much of something which you don't want. You will not be jealous of that person. So two conditions are necessary for jealousy to come. Number one, you badly want something. Number two, somebody is having more than what you have. Both the conditions are necessary to generate jealousy. So who is the root cause of all this? Kama. So who is a sannyasi? A sannyasi is the one who has removed, rather uprooted this kama from his heart. How did he do it? Through knowledge. What is that knowledge? The knowledge is, I need not desire anything of the world. Ultimate goal of any desire is happiness. That happiness is my own true nature. So whenever he wants happiness, he looks within. And there he is happy. He finds akshayam sukham inside. Naturally, such a mind which is saturated with joy, with bliss, will not desire anything else in life. Just like a well-fed dog will not go to the streets to eat anything. You feed your dog properly, that dog will remain at your feet, isn't it? In the same way, the mind which is exposed to the highest joys of life will not wander into the world seeking happiness. So this way he has uprooted kama. Naturally, once the kama is uprooted, the rest, all the others also vanish. Kama krodha viyuktanam yatinam. He is such a person, he is a true yati. Yati means a sannyasi. He need not be a outer sannyasi. He may be a family man. He may be living with his wife, children, etc. He may be an office goer. But from the Bhagavad Gita standpoint, or from the true spiritual standpoint, he is a yati. What are the other qualifications? Yata chetasam. The one who has mastery over the mind. Yata chetasam. One who has conquered his mind. How is he able to conquer his mind? He is able to conquer his mind because vidita atmanam. Because he has known his atma, he has known himself. The one who has known himself, for him conquering the mind is easy. Rather, he has conquered the mind, therefore he has known the self. And since he has known the self, his mind remains permanently tamed, disciplined, obedient. What does mind want? Mind wants happiness. That happiness it has got from the self. So therefore, mind remains tamed, quietened. Viditatmana. Such a person is a yati. What is his experience? Abhitaha Brahma Nirvanam Vartate. For him, Abhitaha, from all sides, he experiences bliss of Brahman. Abhitaha means from all sides, at all times. Now what do you mean from all sides? From all sides means whatever be the situation he be, in all situations he will not miss the experience of bliss. Yogarato va bhogarato va sangarato va sangavihina yasya brahmani ramate chittam nandati nandati nandatyeva. What is experience? Nandati, nandati, nandati eva. His experience is constant bliss. Why? Because yasya brahmani ramate, yasya chittam brahmani ramate. His mind is reveling in Brahman. Yogaratova bhogaratova. He may be in yoga, he may be in bhoga. Sangaratova sangavihina. He may be with people, he may be without people. Sometimes he may be all alone. But this experience doesn't go. This is called Abhitaha Brahma Nirvanam Vartate. Whatever be the situation, Yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Even the greatest tragedies won't shake him. He experiences that bliss unconditionally at all times. Not only while living, but also after death. This is meaning Abhitaha. At all times, whether living or dead, experience remains constant. So this way, in this verse, the topic gets completed. So what is the message? Arjuna, be a true yati. Be a true sannyasi. Don't worry whether you have outwardly, externally renounced the world or not. That is not the point. The point is whether from within you have done true renunciation. Has your mind renounced everything other than God? Then you are a sannyasi. How will you know? You will know at the seat of meditation. At the seat of meditation, if the mind is wandering, what does it mean? You are a samsari. At the seat of meditation, if the mind is abiding in the self, what does it mean? You are a sannyasi. So what is the test? Meditation is the test. Now Bhagavan takes up the topic of meditation, which is the real topic of the next chapter. So now Bhagavan is inspiring Arjuna to meditate through the remaining 3 verses. Actually, these 3 verses should go for the next chapter. It's an introduction to the 6th chapter. The name of 6th chapter is Dhyana Yoga. So how to perform this dhyana is the topic. Let us chant 27 and 28. Sparshan kritva bahirbahyan Chakshuschaivantare bhruvoho Pranapanau samau kritva Nasabhyantaracharinav Yatendriyamano buddhihi Munirmokshaparayanaha विगतेच्छा भयक्रोधः यः सदा मुक्त एव सः स्पर्शान् कृत्वा बहिर्बाह्यान् चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवोः प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यतेन्द्रियमनो बुद्धिः मुनिर्मोक्षपरायणः विगतेच्छा भयक्रोधः यः सदा मुक्त एव सः. Yes. Now we are talking of antaranga sadhana. There are two types of sadhanas. One is bahiranga sadhana. The other one is antaranga sadhana. What is bahiranga sadhana? What are the spiritual practices you do generally throughout the day? That is called bahiranga sadhana. As a part of purification of mind. Performing action as a worship of the Lord, etc., etc. They come under bahiranga sadhana. Now here Bhagavan speaks about antaranga sadhana. At the seat of meditation, what are the preparation to be done? One is called general preparation throughout the day. Another one is called specific preparation at the seat of meditation. It is called as antaranga sadhana. So what are we supposed to do at the seat of meditation? When you sit, what you have to do? Bahyan sparshan bahihi kritva. This is the first time. Here sparshan means sense objects. Bahyan sparshan. Keep the outer sense objects bahihi kritva. Keep it outside itself. Let the outer sense objects be outside. Meaning what? Don't bring it inside. Meaning what? Don't think of it. How do you bring the outer sense objects within? Only when you think about it, you bring within. Till then it is outside only, isn't it? Bahyan sparshan bahihi kritva. Meaning, at the seat of meditation, don't think of anything of the world. Then you have cut off the outer world. Remember, here we are going towards we are taking the inner journey. We are not going outward, we are going inside. When you are going inside, you don't need any of the objects, things, beings of the outside world. Renounce the outer world. Normally people ask, Swamiji, can we meditate anywhere? Yes, you can meditate anywhere provided you don't bring anything of the world inside you. But normally it is difficult for the beginner. So therefore we say meditate in solitude, meditate in some temple, etc., etc. So that for the beginner the environment definitely affects the mind. But once you have become an adept in meditation, even in the most disturbing place also you can meditate. Because such a person is able to cut off the outer world, not allowing it to interfere with the mind. He is able to stay without thinking about the outer disturbances. In that case, he can meditate anywhere. So this is the first thing to be done. What is it? Keep the outer world outside. Then, chakshuhu cha eva antare bhruvoho. Bhruvoho antare chakshuhu krutva. Keep your eyes at the center of the eyebrow. What you have to do? Fix your eyes at the center of the eyebrow. If you try to do it, within 1 minute, it starts paining. Within 1 minute, it will be a lot of strain. And there are many people who literally follow this. See, these are all scriptures. You need guidance for everything. You can't just read the scripture and start doing meditation. If you do this, the eyes will get strained and you will stop meditation within 1 minute. So what does it mean? Remember, this is an inward journey. In an inward journey, do you need eyes fleshy eyes. None of your sense organs are needed in this inward journey called meditation. So then what you have to do? Roll it and keep it aside. It's of no use. For the outward journey, all these sense organs are necessary. But for the inward journey, these sense organs are more of a distraction and disturbance. So therefore what you have to do? You have to just roll it and keep outside. Now here only eyes are mentioned, everything else are included. Any sense organ. Meaning, keep it aside. It is of no use. Now why is it said that the eyes should be at the center of the eyebrow? Don't worry about it. It will automatically gravitate towards the center. You don't have to put effort in it. As you find the mind becoming more and more quiet, your eyebrows will automatically focus here. You don't have to struggle for it. It happens. Many times what happens is people pay importance to all these little unnecessary things, and the main thing is forgotten. How should be the backbone, the neck, this asana, what type of asana should I sit, how the leg should be placed, whether Padmasana or Sukhasana, how the hand should be, which mudra, chin mudra, this mudra, that mudra, all unnecessary things. Preparation is done, and when the main thing comes, that is forgotten. So these are all not very important instructions, in the sense, this is not what is important at the seat of meditation. Yes, what next? Pranapanau samau krutva nasabhyantara charinau. The next step, what you have to do is, now you have to hold the mind. How to hold the mind? The easiest way is holding your breath, regulating your breath, making your breathing steady. What is the relationship between breathing and mind? Vayurodhanat liyate manah jalapakshivat rodhasadhanam. It comes in Upadesha Saram. As you regulate your breath, the mind becomes quietened. Your breath and mind has got a relationship. Quieter the mind, breath will become slow and steady. Make your breath slow and steady, mind will become helplessly quiet. This is the relationship. Ramana Maharshi says, Jala Pakshivat, like a bird caught up in the net. Mind has no other choice but to become quiet. Once you make your breathing steady. Like a bird caught up in the net. So bird represents mind. Net represents breathing, pranayama. Nasyabhyantara charinau pranapanau samau krutva. The prana and apana. Prana means exhalation, apana means inhalation. So the process of exhalation and inhalation, where do you feel it? Nasabhyantara charinau, which is felt inside the nostrils. So what you have to do? Samau krutva, making it steady, slow. What you have to do? Just watch your breath. Make it slow, deep and steady, and just watch it. What will happen? You'll find the mind quietening now. Why did Bhagwan mention this as the first exercise? Bhagwan has mentioned this as the first exercise because it is easier. Controlling the grosser aspect of the body is easier than controlling the subtler aspect. Controlling the prana is always easier than controlling the mind. Mind is subtler, so it is difficult to control. Prana is grosser, it is easier. So do this. So over a period of time, maybe 5-10 minutes, when you do this pranayama, what happens? Your mind has become quiet. Now you may ask this question, the purpose of the all spiritual sadhana is quietude of mind. Why not continue pranayama only? The sadhana should end here. Purpose is quietude, and here we have attained quietude. The problem is, the moment you stop pranayama, mind becomes again restless. That is why Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi used the example of Jala Pakshivat. As long as net is there, bird may appear to be quiet. But the moment you remove the net, what happens? Bird flies away. So here the purpose is not throughout the day you keep on doing pranayama. That is not the purpose. The purpose is even when you are not consciously involved in controlling the mind, mind should be tamed. It should be tamed effortlessly, naturally. This is the goal. And this can be gained only through knowledge. All other means are only suppression, which will not yield permanent result. That doesn't mean you should not do pranayama. Pranayama has got its own benefits. Health-wise, it can improve your health. A person who does regular pranayama keeps his health very fit. Because what are you doing in pranayama? You are making your pancha pranas strong. What are the pancha pranas? Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. Pancha pranas. And these are the pancha pranas which make your, what you call, all the physiological functions that happen in the body. All these functions are performed by these pancha pranas. Like blood circulation, digestion, excretion, and all those functions that happen inside the body. Who takes care of it? The prana takes care. So when you make this prana strong through pranayama, all the physiological functions happen smoothly. And once the physiological functions are smooth, you have a brilliant health. So in that aspect, pranayama is very important, no doubt. But as far as the meditation is concerned, its importance lies that in the beginning, now you are in the runway of meditation. So first you gain momentum and then fly, isn't it? So in gaining momentum, pranayama helps. First it quietens the mind. So through pranayama, quieten the mind. Then what are you supposed to do? Yatendriya mano buddhihi. Once that mind is quietened, then apply the knowledge. A quiet mind is available for knowledge. So through knowledge, control your indriya senses, mana, mind, buddhi, intellect. Senses should be withdrawn with the help of the mind, and the mind should be withdrawn with the help of the intellect. How to do it? Now remember, this person who is meditating, he is not just meditating. He has already done all the sadhanas, shravana, manana, etc. So what kind of buddhi he will possess? He will possess a buddhi or the intellect which has doubtless knowledge. He has already done shravana, listening to the scriptures. He has already done manana, reflection upon the knowledge. And now his mind is free from doubts. With such a buddhi he is seated. Therefore, he is able to withdraw the mind from the world. Yata indriya manaha. Mind readily comes under the discipline of this intellect. And with such a restrained senses, mind and intellect, what does he do? Munihi. Munihi means contemplative person. This we had seen earlier also. Muni. Manana Shilavan. He contemplates. What does he contemplate? Contemplates upon the highest truth. What is real, what is unreal, what is true, what is untrue. He discriminates. And then what he does? Whatever is real, whatever is unreal, he discards it. Whatever is real, he tries to fix his mind upon that. So that is the next term, moksha parayanaha. Parayanaha, keeping that as the supreme goal. What is the supreme goal? Moksha, liberation. This moksha is nothing but jnana. keeping knowledge as the supreme goal. So naturally, what happens? When that mind is absorbed in the higher truth, what happens to him? Vigata Ichha Bhaya Krodha. This happens. All the Ichha desires goes away. Now here also 3 terms are used. Ichha, Bhaya, Krodha. All of them are related. Ichha means desire. Desire here doesn't mean desire for God. Vigata Ichha. No desire for God. No desire for anything worldly. So from Ichha comes Bhaya. When you badly desire something, there is a fear that I may not get that thing. So Ichha and Bhaya, they are related. Again, Ichha and Krodha, they are related. When you badly want something and when you are not getting it, you become angry. So again, the root is Ichha only. Now this person is free from Ichha, Bhaya, Krodha. Why is he free? He is free because there is no Ichha. Why there is no Ichha, desire? Because he has attained the highest, the all blissful self. And he comes to know this is something which I can never lose because it is my nature. And since I can never lose it, there is no desire for possessing it. Because it is already mine. Can you have desire of something which is already yours, which you can never lose? Can you have a desire for that? No. Can you be afraid of that it may be lost? No. It is your nature. So there is no Bhaya, there is no Ichha, naturally there is no Krodha also. He becomes free from all kinds of mental fluctuations, disturbances. Bhagavan says, if at all there is someone like that, yaha, such a person is saha sada mukta eva. Such a person is ever liberated. He has attained the truth, therefore he is ever liberated. Now the question is, how to meditate upon God? Now you have to meditate upon the truth, isn't it? What is that truth? How to meditate upon it? A very beautiful verse. The last one, let us chant. Bhoktaram yajna tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Jnatva Mam Shanti Mricchati Bhoktaram Yajna Tapasam Suhridam Sarvabhutanam Jnatva Mam Shanti Mricchati. Jnatva Mam, knowing me, he attains Shanti. Who is this me? So the descriptions are given. Yajna Tapasam Bhoktaram Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Sarvabhutanam Suhridam Mam Jnatva Shantim Richati. So this is how, so some pointers are given. How to meditate upon God. So when you meditate upon God, remember your heart must be involved. Your head must be involved. Your entire personality must be involved while meditating upon Him. Heart alone will not do. Head alone will not do. Head and heart has to be there. So when I say heart, what does it mean? Your heart must be filled with love for Him. Head should be involved. Means what? You must have tremendous amount of respect and reverence for Him. You must value Him. That respect comes through head. Love comes through heart. Many times we love someone, but we don't respect. Many times we respect someone, but we don't love. Isn't it? It's possible. Our college professors, we respect them, but many times we don't love them. Our children, we love them, but many times we don't respect them. Now, when you turn your attention to God, let your entire personality be involved. How to respect Him? The two terms are given. Yajna tapasam bhoktaram. Whatever yajna and tapas you do, He is the one who receives it. Now, what do you mean by yajna and tapas? Other than the traditional meaning, tapas means all the efforts in conserving energy within us. This is called tapas. Any effort to conserve one's energy is called tapas. Now, once you have conserved the energy, you have to apply the energy in the chosen field, isn't it? That is called yajna. So these are the two processes involved. First, conserve the energy. Second, apply the energy. The entire spiritual practice is nothing but this. Conserve, apply. Once you conserve, you have lot of energy with you. Apply those energy in the fruitful channels so that you evolve spiritually. Tapas means conservation. Yajna means application. Who is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is the Bhokta, receiver. Whatever tapas you do, whatever sadhana you do, He is the one who receives everything. Unto Him it goes. Isn't it? All sadhana is keeping God in mind. So He is the Bhokta. So you develop respect for Him. At the same time, Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. Who is He? Maha Ishvara. The Supreme Lord. All-powerful Lord. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent Lord. He is. Bhayad asyagnis tapati, bhayad tapati suryaha, bhayad indrascha vayuscha, mrityur dhavati panchama. Out of His fear, all the cosmic functions are happening. The sun rises out of His fear. Isn't it? The air blows out of His fear. The rain is raining out of His fear. All cosmic functions are happening because of Him. The seasons change out of His fear. Meaning what? There is a Supreme Lord who is in total control of every cosmic happening in this world. Imagine Him. So naturally what happens? There is a sense of tremendous respect and reverence for this great truth. A little bit of fear is also there. That is necessary. Little bit of fear of God is also necessary. I cannot escape with my wrongdoings. He is there watching. He is all powerful. He knows everything. He is the very consciousness in me. He is the very life supporting mechanism in me. So then what happens? Your intellect regards that God at a very high level. Isn't it? This way you bring in Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, the Supreme Lord of all. Even one blade of grass cannot move here and there without His consent. Now lot of respect is there, reverence is there. Is it enough? No. Now you have to fill your heart with love. How to do it? Another term. Sarva Bhutanam Suhridam. The friend of all beings. So the earlier one is like a fatherly figure. Strict father. Now here it is a motherly figure. Fatherly figure gives you respect towards God. Motherly figure gives you love towards God. Now fill your heart also with love. How to fill your heart with love for God? Understand He is Suhrit. Suhrit means friend. He is a friend of all. Meaning what? He is your well-wisher. Whatever He does for your good. He loves you unconditionally. Whether you believe in His existence or not, He loves you. There is a Supreme Lord, all-powerful Lord who loves you, who is very much concerned about you, who is all the time looking after you, taking care of you. Suhridam. Now what happens? Your heart is filled with love for God. Just like a bird needs 2 wings to fly, in the same way, your head and the heart both are needed to take this flight of meditation. Mere love or mere sentimentalism or mere too much of respect, both will not do. They alone will not do. Both are necessary. Heart also should be developed. Head also should be developed. Now you may bring all these feelings, but understand who is this God? Jnatva mam. Knowing me. Who is this me? None other than the consciousness in you. Don't keep God away, far away. Somewhere beyond some 7 heavens or 7 clouds or whatever. Who can never be approached. Who can never be experienced. Giving blessing to rare few Mahatmas sitting in some caves of the Himalayas. Not like that. He is not unapproachable. He is very much there. Where? Right here. As what? As the very consciousness. He is nearer to you than your very life breath. That way you meditate. So when you meditate, bring in all these pointers in the mind. In Vishnu Sahasranama also you can use so many pointers from there. Sahasranama, there are 1,000 names. They are not merely for chanting. Take one name, whichever you like. Meditate upon it. Bring feelings to it. Don't make it mechanical chanting. No doubt you must learn it. But after learning, learn to ruminate, contemplate upon this. Then slowly you will find the heart getting filled with feelings of love for God. This way, if you meditate, remember for all this, purity of mind is essential. Otherwise your mind will be going to Kamini Kanchana Kirti only. See, if you want to constantly remain on a topic and meditate and contemplate, if that mind has to remain there, you must have to a great extent control over the mind. Otherwise all these things is impossible. You may have a wonderful asana, wonderful seat. You may be in the Chinmudra, in Padmasana, but if the mind is impure, what is the use? At the most, people can take photographs and publish it in newspaper. You will become famous, a great yogi. But inside, you are a bhogi only. Karmendriyani sanyamya yaaste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharasa uchyate, Bhagavan says. He is a hypocrite. What does he do? Bodily posture, yogic posture. Perfect. But inside what is he doing? All worldly things he is meditating upon. Such a person is a hypocrite. Such a person is a mudhatma, the embodiment of delusion. So remember, this is the most important point. It doesn't matter whether you are sitting on a chair or lying down. It doesn't matter. Not necessarily that you should sit on Padmasana, etc. Not necessary. Remain comfortably in a chair. But can you do all this? The question is, where is your mind? The question is, are you enjoying that state of being with God? The question is, are you experiencing that joy? Are you getting the rasa, the taste, the juice? Are you getting it? Then your meditation is successful. Who cares what is the posture of your body? Who cares? What is the proof that my meditation is good? Proof is Shantim Richati. Proof is peace. If your meditation is successful, your mind is at peace. This is the proof. After all meditation, if your mind is still disturbed, it means nothing has happened. Engine might have made sound, but the takeoff has not happened. Understood? So the proof is Shanti. More and more peace. Remember, this peace is your own nature. So what is happening when you are becoming more and more peaceful? You are going nearer and nearer to your own nature. You are abiding in your nature. You are with God. So what is the proof that I am with God? Peace of mind is a proof that I am with God. Whenever the mind is disturbed, what you have to understand? I have been thrown out from the kingdom of God. Isn't it? The moment you commit the mistake of being indulgent, of being immoral, of being negative, of being foolish, immediately you are thrown away from the kingdom of God. Don't think, see, this kingdom is somewhere in the heaven, one big asana. There is not. Real kingdom of God is this peace. Thus, this chapter comes to an end. Let us chant the last line. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Sannyasa Yogo Nama Panchamodhyayah. Yes, thus comes to an end this fifth chapter. What is the name of the fifth chapter? Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Why this chapter has been named Karma Sannyasa Yoga? The act of renouncing through action. Attaining the supreme goal through the world by performing the duties in the world. That is why it is called Karma Sannyasa Shat. Thus, this chapter comes to an end. I sincerely invoke the grace of the Lord, the blessings of Puja Gurudev. May we also attain this wonderful knowledge as early as possible. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayah Sarve Bhadrani Pasyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhave Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.